Tim Thomas outplayed legends, stole a Stanley Cup, and still got snubbed from the NHL's Quarter Century Team. And that, my friends, is a complete act of disrespect.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I am your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoked B. Today is Tuesday, May 13th. Thank you so much for making Locked On Bruins your first listen every day. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today we are discussing the NHL's Quarter Century Club team with respect to goaltenders specifically, and the fact that both Tim Thomas and Tuukka Rask have more than compelling cases to be included, and the fact that it was based on a fan vote suggests that it was more name recognition at play here than actual numbers and facts. And we'll break down why both Tim Thomas and Tuukka Rask deserve consideration, as well as project whether Jeremy Swayman could be on the next quarter century team in 2050. Before we get into all that, a quick reminder, you can find the podcast on social media at Locked NHL Bruins. That's Instagram, X, Blue Sky, even on TikTok these days. And you can also find me, my hockey thoughts, dad jokes, at Ian C. McLaren. I am a lifelong Boston Bruins fan. Been covering this team and the NHL for various outlets for about 20 years now, which is kind of crazy. So, on Sunday, the NHL released the final group of players in the NHL Quarter Century Team. And it was made up of 6 goalies that were voted onto the team. And this Quarter Century Team was selected via fan vote from February 12th to April 1st. Fan vote followed the reveal of all 32 NHL clubs' first and second teams, which were announced earlier this year. The 6 goalies that were named are Martin Brodeur, Marc-Andre Fleury, Henrik Lundqvist, Roberto Luongo, Carey Price, and Patrick Roy. You'll see from that list that there is a distinct lack of Boston Bruins content there, which is a real shame because both Tuukka Rask and Tim Thomas have compelling cases to be included among the 6 NHL Quarter Century Team goalies, particularly given their accomplishments during the time frame given. We'll start with Tim Thomas. Listen to this resume. 2-time Vezina Trophy winner, 2009, 2011. He was a Stanley Cup champion in 2011, a Conn Smythe Trophy winner in 2011 after a legendary playoff run, and a career save percentage of .920. Thomas had peak performance window, which was arguably unmatched in intensity. His 2011 season and playoff run was one of the greatest ever by a goaltender. He had an unorthodox style and dominance during that cup win that left a significant legacy. And very few goalies have won 2 Vezinas, a cup, and a Conn Smythe within such a short span. Now, you could argue that Tim Thomas had perhaps a shorter peak, a late start to his NHL career, and didn't really have the longevity. But again, we're looking at just the years 2000 to 2025, and his peak brilliance, you could argue, outshone that of, or the period of time in which Patrick Roy, for example, was included on this list. He retired in 2003 and had his best years, you could argue, in the pre-2000s. Let's compare Patrick Roy and Tim Thomas, specifically during the period of time in which this vote is supposed to be based on. Roy his latter years were like 2000 to 2003. Thomas's NHL career impact window was about 2005 to 2012. Here's what Roy did with the Avalanche during that period. About 250 regular season games, a save percentage of .914. He did win a Stanley Cup in 2001. He had a William Jennings Trophy win in 2002 and a couple of All-Star appearances. He was still elite in this window. He won a cup in 2001 and earned key wins in the playoffs. But the bulk of his career, 3 Conn Smythes, 2 of his 3 cups, occurred before 1999. So if you're looking just at that 3-4 year window, pretty good. 251 regular season games, a Stanley Cup, but no Vezinas and no Conn Smythes in that time. Now, Tim Thomas had about 350 regular season games, a save percentage of .921, a playoff record of 29 and 21, Stanley Cup in 2011, 2 Vezinas, 2009, 2011, the Conn Smythe, the Stanley Cup in 2011, and a save percentage of .933 during that playoff run. 940, I should say. One of the most dominant single-season playoff runs in history. His 2011 postseason, .940 save percentage, 4 shutouts, Conn Smythe statistically superior to Roy's Cup run in 2001. And although his NHL career was shorter, he achieved more individual hardware in this quarter century era than did Patrick Roy. So if you're judging solely on performance from 1999 onward, Thomas clearly outperformed Roy in both individual awards and playoff dominance. Roy's name carries more historical weight due to his pre-99 or pre-2000 legacy, but that should not be a factor in the quarter century list that begins in 2000. For a list based on fan voting, Patrick Roy's fame overshadowed Thomas's shorter but statistically dominant peak. And he had a better resume in the quarter century window than did Patrick Roy. That's just a fact. You look at his overall playoff numbers, in the regular season, I should say, he had a .920 save percentage, which is tied with Patrick Roy this is between January 1st, 2000 and December 31st, 2024. They each had identical save percentages of .920. Tim Thomas had 31 shutouts compared to 20 for Patrick Roy. He had 214 wins compared to 126. Of course, Thomas played in 200 more games, but that's kind of the point. In this specific period of time, he had better numbers than Patrick Roy. Patrick Roy in 68 playoff games between 2000 and 2000, when he retired in 2003, he had a .922 save percentage. Tim Thomas leads all goaltenders in playoff save percentage in this quarter century time frame with a mark of .933, highlighted by that .940 in the 2011 Cup run. How can you keep him off the list when he has the best playoff save percentage of this quarter century? An unbelievable run that year, which, by the way, he outmatched Roberto Luongo, who happens to be on this list, which is insane when you look at that head-to-head matchup in 2011. So forget Patrick Roy. Let's look at Roberto Luongo. Tim Thomas outdueled him in that 2011 run. How do you put Roberto Luongo over Tim Thomas? Yeah, he had a .918 save percentage, 5 shutouts in 70 playoff games, but Luongo never won the Vezina. He went to the final in 2011, but did not win. How do you take him over a guy who outbeat or outplayed him in the 2011 playoffs and who has way more hardware than Roberto Luongo? It's insane to not include Tim Thomas on this list. And you can make an argument for Tuukka Rask. And that's exactly what we're going to do here as the podcast continues. If you're looking for a snack that is both delicious and nutritious, well, look no further than a great source of protein in Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. I love the no shells variety. It's the perfect grab and go snack for busy days. Whether I'm snacking at my desk, on a road trip, or just need a quick protein boost, they're always my go-to. We give them to our super picky 12-year-old as well, and he loves cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch with the in-shell options that are also a classic favorite. Get snacking, get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Thank you so much once again for making Locked On Bruins part of your regular routine. Everydayers are already subscribed on their favorite podcast apps and on YouTube. Please join in and keep following along with Boston Bruins coverage daily here through at least the first week of free agency, after which we'll take a bit of a break over the offseason. But there's going to be plenty to talk about with respect to our Boston Bruins over the next couple of months. Today, we're talking about the NHL Quarter Century goaltenders and how both Tim Thomas and Tuukka Rask have compelling cases to be included. Now, when it comes to Tuukka Rask, he did win a Vezina Trophy in 2014. He was a Stanley Cup champion in 2011, albeit as a back of, but instrumental as a guy who helped Tim Thomas remain fresh for that run. He was a Stanley Cup finalist as well in 2013, 2019, 2013. If the Bruins had been able to make it past Chicago, he would have certainly been the Conn Smythe Trophy winner that year. He's the all-time winningest goalie in Bruins history. He has a career save percentage of .921, which is among the best in NHL history. And in fact, it is tied for the highest in this time period. I mentioned Patrick Waugh, Tim Thomas with .920. Tuukka Rask is level with Ben Bishop at .921 over the course of the past 25 years. Tuukka Rask also has a playoff save percentage of .925 with 104 starts, a record of 57-46. Unfortunately, he was not able to get the team over the hump in the finals, but still just an unbelievable save percentage in the playoffs. I saw it said earlier this week on social media that Connor Hellebuck is, I think it was Ty Anderson who said it, Connor Hellebuck's numbers, that's what Bruins fans believe Tuukka Rask did. But it's actually quite the opposite. He stepped up huge in the playoffs for this team and was a main reason why they made it to the finals 2 times after 2011. He also won the William Jennings Trophy in 2020, one of the most consistently elite goalies of the past 25 years. His stats, his advanced metrics often place him among the top 5 to 10 goalies year over year, carried the Bruins to 2 finals, consistently reliable in the postseason, and his career numbers compare very favorably or exceed those of some goalies on the list like Marc-Andre Fleury and Roberto Luongo in the playoffs. Rask did lack a cup win as a starter, which may have hurt his narrative, but Roberto Luongo didn't win a Stanley Cup. And while fan voting tends to favor name recognition and longevity over peak dominance, Tuukka Rask had both. He had peak dominance, but he had that longevity. He's the Bruins' winningest goaltender. Now, controversy or polarizing off-ice views, say in Tim Thomas's case, may have affected fan voting, but at least one of these Bruins legends deserved stronger consideration. Tuukka Rask for his sustained excellence, Tim Tomic for his peak brilliance and unmatched 2011 postseason performance. Both had more tangible impact during the time period window than, say, a Patrick Waugh or even a Roberto Luongo. If the team was based more on performance than name recognition or legacy, either of them should be on the list. Again, Rask's playoff percentage is tops among the best in NHL history. .925 save percentage across 104 games, placing him within the top for all goaltenders with a minimum of 50 playoff appearances in NHL history. Among goalies with at least 55 playoff games since 98, he ranked second in career even strength save percentage at .935, just behind Dominic Hasek at .939. These stats underscore his exceptional consistency and skill during high-pressure playoff scenarios, solidifying his reputation as one of the premier postseason goalies in NHL history. I don't care what your older brother or your younger cousin have to say, Tuukka Rask was not the reason why the Bruins did not win a cup during that time. He is not the reason why the Bruins only have one cup win in this time period. Tim Thomas, you could argue, stole that Stanley Cup from the Vancouver Canucks, who were heavily favored as the President's Trophy winners. He just was unreal in that series. Even the games they lost in Vancouver to begin that series, it was very close games. He kept them right in it, gave them that confidence to come back to Boston and dominate. You look at Roberto Luongo's save percentage in that series, and it's night and day compared to Tim Thomas. In that series against the Bruins, Roberto Luongo was amazing at home. He had a record of 3-0 in the first 3 games of the series, or the first 5 games of the series. Save percentage of .979 with 2 shutouts. He was nearly unbeatable at Rogers Arena. But when it came to Boston before Game 7, he had a record of 0-3 with a .773 save percentage, allowing 15 goals in those 3 games. And then, of course, his overall save percentage in that series leveled out at .891 after the Bruins won in Game 7. So please forgive me for taking exception to Luongo being over Tim Thomas. It's not even close. And you could argue he didn't even outplay Tuukka Rask over that stretch either. Now, you can give props to Martin Brodeur, who won the Stanley Cup twice with the Devils in 2003, Vezina and Jennings Trophy winner. He also won the Cup in 2000. He was just one of the all-time greats, even in this period. Marc-Andre Fleury won the Stanley Cup 3 times, although Matt Murray was the starter for the latter 2, but still great goalie. Henrik Lundqvist won the Vezina. Didn't win any Stanley Cups. No Conn Smythes. You could argue that either Rask or Thomas belong in there over him. Luongo, we've already talked about. Carey Price as well. He'd won the Vezina Hart Ted Lindsay Award and Jennings Trophy in 2015. But again, no Stanley Cups, no Conn Smythes. You could argue that Thomas belongs in there over him as well. So again, it all comes down to the fan vote. name recognition. Oh yeah, these guys are legends, so let's pick them. Rask didn't win a cup on his own, so that hurt his chances. Tim Thomas had a brief but fantastic career. That likely hurt his chances, but either one of them could and should have been on this list. Now, when it comes to the next quarter century, could a guy like Jeremy Swayman be on there? Well, we'll discuss that here as the podcast continues. All right, let's say it's the year 2050 and there's the next quarter century team that is being named. My goodness, I'll be like 70 almost when that happens. But could Jeremy Swayman be in that mix? Well, he's got a lot of work to do, but he has demonstrated considerable promise as a goaltender for the Boston Bruins, especially in postseason play. Notably during the 2024 playoffs, where he posted a .933 save percentage over 12 games, ranking him among the top in Bruins playoff history. His career playoff save percentage stands at .922, placing him third among Bruins goalies with at least 15 postseason games. And you could make a real argument that if he had been put in the net earlier in 2023, the Bruins could have had a much better chance of beating the Florida Panthers. But this will honor the top players from 2025 to 2050, and he'll have to do a lot of things in order for that to happen. He will, of course, need to help the Boston Bruins win a Stanley Cup. He will have to win some Vezina trophies on his own. He does have a Jennings trophy, but that, of course, was pre-2025. So we're talking like kind of right now up until the next 25 years, right? If his current trajectory continues or even accelerates is how he could make the 2050 quarter century team. Career playoff save percentage of .922, which I mentioned is already among the best. Outstanding playoff run last season where he stood tall against the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Florida Panthers. He already is an all-star. He does have a Jennings trophy. He's born in 98, so he'll just be around 27 at the start of the 2025 to 2050 window, right in his prime. And it's possible and often typical that goaltenders peak later and remain productive into their 30s, like a Tuukka Rask, like a Jonathan Quick, like a Henrik Lundqvist. He has to become the full-time starter and post consistent .920 save percentage seasons. He needs to win at least one Stanley Cup, earn Vezina consideration and wins, and stay healthy and rack up 500 games played. If he does all that, he's a strong candidate. What could hold him back? Lack of long-term starter workload. So far, he's been platooning with Linus Ullmark. Took a heavier load this season. His numbers kind of tanked. Was that a function of the whole contract stalemate? Was it a function of missing training camp? Getting used to a new tandem partner in Joonas Korpisalo? Maybe. Hopefully he comes back this coming season and is able to be stronger than ever. It's a crowded field, though. There's up-and-coming goalies like Jake Ottinger, who could win a Stanley Cup this season. UC Saros, although he's getting a bit older. Devin Levi, Yaroslav Askarov, all younger guys on the up-and-up could also stake claims. NHL team success is a factor as well. Playoff runs, Stanley Cups will matter, especially in fan voting, although that wasn't the case with respect to Carey Price or Roberto Luongo. Maybe it's because they played for Canadian teams. We're an original 16. We need to get in on the fan vote when it comes to these things to give our guys the recognition they deserve. Jeremy Swayman has all the tools. He's technically sound, mentally sharp, already building an elite save percentage resume. If he can seize the net full-time, rack up some awards, deep playoff runs, he absolutely could be one of the top 6 goalies from 2025 to 2050. Unfortunately for him, the Bruins are at a different time in their trajectory than they were with Tim Thomas, certainly with Tuukka Rask. The fact that the Bruins only had that one cup run in 2011, very unfortunate. You look at the core they had with Rask, Thomas, Zdeno Chara, Patrice Bergeron, David Krejci, Brad Marchand, Torrey Krug came later. That core, you could argue, should have won more than one Stanley Cup. They had the perfect opportunity in 2019. If they had won that game against the St. Louis Blues, then so many of these guys' legacies would have been cemented as greater than they are perceived to be right now. They would have had a couple cups. Rask likely would have won a Conn Smythe Trophy. So many things would have come in place for them to be viewed as one of the great cores of all time. Fortunately, they fell short in 2019, and these guys don't get perhaps as much respect as they deserve. It's unfortunate, but we'll continue to bang the drum here on the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast because that's what we do here every single day. Thank you so much for making Locked On Bruins your first listen. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NHL Game Night show. Every game, every night, until a Stanley Cup champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale. You can find NHL Game Night on Locked On NHL, wherever you get your podcasts, and on YouTube. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your favorite team every single day. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen. Please do have a great Tuesday. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and we'll talk to you here again on the next episode of Locked On Boston Bruins.